Actually, I liked a number of things in the document.
Okay.
Um, Especially, they've also told us about how they would like the curriculum to be, that it should not be in silos, that it should be a more interdisciplinary curriculum. There are lots of things that I liked very much about the document, but as all of us know, it's only a vision document statement, it's nothing else.
Promissory note.
Exactly. And how is this going to be implemented is, I think, the main problem. And because since we all of us know that education is on the concurrent list, there are definitely going to be problems between the center and the states. And I think that there'll be PILs floating around, and it's going to take a little while. I mean, they have given a timeline, but I guess we'll just have to wait and watch.
Wait and watch. That's the best way. Being on the fence, I would say. You're right. Absolutely. I think.
And this business about having pre-primary education or up to, I think it is class, up to the age of 8 in the mother tongue is, I think, a little difficult in a country like ours. It depends where the child is and where the school is, because there are metropolises, there are very, very urban areas, there are village, rural areas. What do we do? Are we going to put our children at disadvantage? I think the mother tongue should be taught in the home by the parents. That's fine. That's my view.
Correct, correct. No, thank you. Thank you for kicking this off in a way. I think a lot of good in the document, and obviously Mr. Saru will take up these questions. I mean, because I think he's the best individual who can really take up all these questions for us largely, because he was, what, I think 2 years ago, our secretary at the school education at the government of India largely. So I think personally, this will be a very invigorating discussion. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to quickly suggest anything, broad observations? If you have, Pramodji, would you like to say what have you been able to, yeah, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
The only thing which I could, witness there, that is what exactly, what would be the examination procedure. Because, we have the examination at 3rd grade, then at 5th, then at 8th. There is no examination is class 10th, rather having straightway the board examination is class 12th. So what would be the, further policies, how to conduct the internal assessments, and there is no external assessment. So that needs, to be focused, and to be more, training is required to be more like when it was implemented, the CC pattern was implemented. That was a fantastic one. But, it was not properly implemented. That was the cause of the failure. So I'm very much worried about, this is a very good policy, what has been, NEP 2020 has been introduced. But at the same time, if again, it is not going to be implemented in a perfect way, then really, what will be the future of the education then?
You already sound a little disappointed. Never mind. Don't worry. Let's be optimistic.
Really worried. Really worried.
Don't worry. I think we will navigate through in the right fashion.
Yes. That is what is required. A lot of introspection is required. We need to, lot of discussion, a lot of deliberations are required to come up certain, what conclusion, how exactly it has to be done.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. So
yeah.
Fantastic. So we are 2 minutes away. So what I'll do is quickly,
or maybe engineering drawing or engineering mathematics.
Someone is teaching on the
yes.
mobile. Anyway, though I've muted him. So okay. So I'll quickly kickstart this. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Firstly, thank you for being with us today. And as I said, we have a very special guest in Mr. Anil Swaroop, who, for that matter, I was really not aware that he is an IS officer from 1918, one batch from UP cadre, and more importantly, he's born and brought up in Allahabad, which is now Prayagraj. And having said this, given I was born and brought up in Jhansi, so I find he's more from my estate, so I feel a little more connected, if I may say. But nevertheless, he's been an individual of national stature, if I may say now, wonderful author. I've been seeing his 2 books which have come out, which is the recent one, The Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, and I look forward to reading that as well. But having said this, we are today here for a very specific agenda, and I think a very, very monumental document is ahead of us, which is the National Education Policy, done up almost after 34 years, which was the last, it was done in 1984, when I was 4-year old, more importantly. So that's the way I should like to make a differentiation, that it's a very important document and it's a very progressive document. And at the same time, in my own humble capacity, if I may say, it's a promissory note. It's a promissory note in the financial terminology. When we offer someone a demand draft, it's actually, or a check, it's a promise to pay someone. So it's similarly a promise made to the entire education fraternity that if we do this right, it's a promise which will unravel in front of us. Otherwise, obviously, such documents may come and go. They may have no relevance largely. But I personally feel it's a very, very well documented, very comprehensive document. Somewhere or the other, there are areas which obviously needs a little more clarification or a little more elaboration. And I thought policymakers could have really made a little more when I say a little more diagrammatic, or it's a fairly theoretical document, very, very heavy on English, if I may say, somewhere or the other, repetitive in nature. So I will now quickly welcome Mr. Swaroop, and welcome, sir. As I said, you need no introduction and no formal introduction, I'm sure, because you are any which way has been a very, very astute individual with respect to your ethical way of conducting yourself. And while I was putting this together, and when I had posted this on IP, and there was palpable excitement for leaders to be a part of this session. So welcome. I welcome you all on behalf of the entire IPN fraternity, sir. Good to have you with us. And if I can request, and in fact, you can unmute yourself. Yeah, over to you, sir. I'll make this a Q&A affair largely. Am I audible, sir? You there?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Fantastic. So I'll just put you on the spotlight. Yeah.
Okay.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here. It is always a pleasure to be amidst teachers, principals, leaders. There's so much to learn. I still learn a lot. Of course, I do get overawed by the fact that I'm amidst principals and teachers. I shudder at the thought. When I was a young child and in school, I used to find it difficult to walk in front of the office of the principal. We were not supposed to do that. And I still have that feeling inside. But coming back to the topic for the day, I think the discussion will have to center around 2 levels.
Yes.
One is at the conceptual level, what you call a promissory note, though I don't agree with you, because promissory note is enforceable under law. This policy is not enforceable under law. So there is a difference between promissory note and this. This is just a promise, not a note. So that's what it is. But let's have a discussion on the conceptual level as what the policy, what are the good parts of it, what are not so good part of it, and what is left out. And more importantly, the operational part of it. I think I was listening to some of the discussions that you were having. And I must tell you, when this policy was when this recommendation was being formulated, Dr. Kasturirangan came to meet me to ask for my suggestions. And I had something to tell him, which he was a bit surprised. I told him, you are wasting your time. He said, why? I said, the country doesn't need a policy. Country needs an action plan. What needs to be done, how it will be done, who will do it, by when it will be done. We've had so many policies, not only education, but many other policies. But the man on the ground couldn't care less. You may write and say anything, make any promise, unless it gets to make happen on the ground, it makes no difference. In fact, both of my books, not just a civil servant and ethical dilemmas of civil servant, focuses on making things happen on the ground. More of walking and less of talking. Of course, post-retirement, I'm doing most of talking. But I am a great believer in making things happen on the ground. Unless that happens, no matter what you say, what you talk, at an academic level, it is great. We can have a great discussion. In fact, we can fight with each other and say, I was recently having another discussion in which people were saying, this should have been there in the policy, that should have been there in the policy. How does that make a difference? And I will come to, as I explained to you, what are the operational issues of this policy. So when I read this policy, which I did, I felt that it should have had an action plan along with it. Without that action plan, it is just mere expression of interest. We can at first level debate whether that expression of interest is worth it. To my mind, my first reaction is it's a very well drafted a policy that covers by and large most of the issues that beset education. And during the course of the discussion today, I'll explain to you why I say what I say. But when we come to operations part, my experience tells me that there is bound to be a serious problem, and then we'll go into each of the aspects of the policy and the operational problem. So I'll give you just an example.
Sorry.
One of the ladies was very aptly and correctly commenting that you are going to get the child learn in his mother tongue. Now, conceptually, it's a brilliant idea. I think no one will deny the fact that in order to fathom a concept or understand something, mother tongue is the best way to learn it, because it's, it is rooted in that soil and it's much easier for the child to do it. So there are things which are eminently desirable, but the practical part of it will have to be looked into. It will require different sort of teachers. It will require more teachers. Where is the money going to come from? So these are the aspects. And of course, people who shift from one state to the other, one place to the other, these are aspects will have to be looked into. Now, the easiest thing on earth is to become a Rai Sahib. And you are from UP, you'll understand this. Rai Sahib is a quintessential advisor. He tells you what to do. When I became, I must digress a bit and tell you, when I became education secretary, I had no experience in the past of education sector. And my ignorance went around and people thought we should go and tell this guy who's totally illiterate about how education should be handled. And there were Rai Sahabs that came to advise me on what needs to be done. And later on, I discovered most of them had done nothing on the ground, but they were good at giving Rai. There were some Rai Sahabs from across the Atlantic, heavily paid, and came and told me, sir, you must visit England, Finland, Holland, Scotland, New Zealand, all the lands of the world. And one of the lighter moments I asked him, have you gone across motherland? Now this policy misses out on the motherland.
Correct.
There is enormous amount of good work being done within the country. Phenomenal. As education secretary in first 3 months, since I was an illiterate man, I went around the country. I visited 24 states. And when I say states, I didn't go only to the headquarters. First 2 districts I visited were Bastar and Sukma. Then I traveled from Pune to Goa, dropping down on the way, looking at the schools. I traveled from Srinagar to Leh, not taking the national highway, deep inside mountains to understand what education is in India. And what I discovered is absolutely amazing. Some phenomenal work is being done in the hinterland. But unfortunately in Delhi, or maybe Mumbai and Calcutta, we feel all wisdom resides in Delhi. The tragedy of this policy was also that there was not a single practitioner in the group that was looking at this policy. And hence, we run into practical problems. They have come up with absolutely fabulously ambitious policy, which needs to be done. So that's eminently desirable. But whether it's practical or not, we'll go across and then we'll see, meet your questions and try and answer.
That's a good way to start this. And obviously, as I said, you are the best individual to answer this for us, or I would say dismantle this for us in terms of the understanding. So I have fundamentally 3 questions which are largely broad-based, and then I'll open the house for larger questions, because there are a lot of questions which will come from the leaders. As I said, that's the way we should try to answer this. The first question, sir, which comes to my mind is, how will the NEP, which is structurally change the schooling system in India? How will this structurally change or it envisages to change largely, if at all it does?
No, I hope it doesn't change the structures.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing that is being discussed in Delhi, and Delhi is a great place where, academicians and experts sit without knowing much of the ground reality. They are talking about this 5 + 3 + 3 + 4.
Yeah.
How does that make a difference? But there is a good thing in it that we have to look at it. I think the brightest part of this policy, there are 2 parts to it. Let me explain that. And that should transform, because that is not being discussed, because that's not sexy enough to be discussed. See, the problem with school education is that of the teacher.
Correct.
Teacher lies at the pivot of school education. If we can sort out the problems relating to the teacher, I think half of problems of education will be sorted out. Let me explain this. The biggest mafia in school education, and I use the word mafia deliberately because they're eating into the essentials of Indian society, is with regard to B.Ed and D.El.Ed colleges. 25% of these colleges don't exist. They are just on paper and they can give you a degree. Now imagine the plight of that individual or that college where this teacher, which has not trained, and the second problem is that the selection of teachers through a test right now is a racket. One chief minister is behind the bars. So you have an untrained teacher calling himself trained, getting it somehow into school. What will he teach? Now, the education policy addresses these two very fundamental issues by talking in terms of an integrated B.Ed course, which has other advantages also. I can go into those details, but let me stick to this part. Yeah. So the education policy, which is not, this part is not being discussed in any TV debate because it is under the terrain and it's not visible, is the effort that it is making with regard to teachers. And mind you, this is the doable part of the policy. We are discussing the non-doable parts of the policy. Here, not great investment is required. Here, the structural change is required, which the policy does. And I can assure you it will be done. Why? Because the decision to have a 4-year integrated course was taken when I was education secretary. And I'm glad that now it has been endorsed by this policy and it will come. Similarly, the teacher entrance test. We had done the groundwork 3 years ago. And I'm glad the policy endorses it and this will happen. This is one great part of the policy. Extremely good part, which will impact everybody. The second good part is the early childhood education. I am so thrilled that it is, again, that is something one wrote the first paper as Secretary of Education, because at that point in time, I discovered, because I was not aware, that the brain of the child gets formulated in the first few years of his existence. And we were just ignoring it, sending them to Anganwadis where they did something or something not. This is a great, great move by the government to incorporate early childhood education. There are other good things in the policy. Where I find that the policy, and now I'm discussing only at the conceptual level, operation we discuss later on, where I find missing is a large number of problems that have been listed out and the suggestions that have been given, the how part has not been explained. So it's easy to say do this, but the real trouble is how do you make it happen? And let me give you an example. The policy very correctly discusses the problem of children leaving the school, out of school children dropping out of the school, very correctly pointed out, and that needs to be addressed. The solution that the policy is providing will not work. And that is why, had there been a practitioner on the policy board, they would have told them this doesn't work. What they have suggested is teachers are going to do it. Teachers apna kaam to kar nahi pa rahe hain, wo bahar wale bachche ko kaise lekar aayenge? Now this job can be done. And that's where my visits to all these states helped me understand it. There are a large number of NGOs that are doing phenomenal job in this regard. Why? Because NGOs have a better and easier access to such families and children where children have dropped out. Teacher, what will teacher do there? But NGOs, since they're interacting and they belong to the local area, they're in a position to get the children back. Now, what this policy misses out and touches only perfunctorily is the role of non-governmental organizations. You know, during this 24 state visit, we picked up 110 models of public-private partnership where transformational things were happening, and I'm not going to go into the details. Those that are interested can read the 2 books that you have mentioned. I have given some explanation there. Now, what really needs to be done is to identify such good practices, understand the how of it, and instead of importing a model from England, Finland, Holland, Scotland, and New Zealand, get these models, replicate them, and scale them. That's much easier. The policy doesn't talk about it. The policy is wishing that what it wants to do will do, whereas the roadmap to get it delivered on the ground has not been clearly chalked out. Perhaps it will be now.
Absolutely. In fact, while you made that mention, sir, at least I can see theoretically that teacher must be at the center of the fundamental reforms in the education system. This is a line which I pick up, which actually made me quite hopeful about the fact that we have a lot of emphasis around teacher development. But as you pointed out, that it has to eventually translate into that real piece, in fact, if I may say.
Gaurav, the point that I was making was, this is already happening. No, it's easy to scale something already happening rather than import, and we are very fond of it. You know, countries like Finland and England, because everyone gets a chance to visit those countries. We import formulas from there without understanding the ground reality here. You know, PISA evaluation is one such thing. Then we had this policy of no detention, which we imported from Finland without understanding the ground reality, imposed it here, consequent to which you have a child going to class 9, knowing nothing. He just went on and on and on. I'm not saying detain a child. My contention is don't do it blindly. You can't import a formula from Finland and impose it here.
Absolutely. I'm with you. Mrs. Barman, you want to say something?
Sir, Jai Hind, and it's such a pleasure to see you whenever you're speaking. And I completely echo your thoughts. And I really, really like the idea of early childhood because that's my area of research. And I just love that they recognized. And I think certain standards would come in, which would help, at especially the time when the human brain is developing the maximum, as we all know. And also love the idea of continuous professional development and teacher training that you spoke about, and completely. I have, sir, two areas which I think one, I need clarification. The other, I'm not very happy about, or maybe I'm not understanding it correctly. The exam at the 3, 5, and 8, though they mention it's going to be mainly for learning outcomes and things, but you know, the way we all are, frankly, schools and parents, I'm hoping that the competition and all that, you know, talking in the press and things that happens in class 10 and 12, it doesn't come down all the way to class 3, class 5, class 8. Though they say we're going to check how learning outcomes are happening, where the skills are building, I'm scared about that. That's one thing, sir. I'm a little scared. The second thing is, I'm not very sure whether they've made good prescriptions and actions for private institution. I belong to a private institution, of course. So they talk about a school complex management committee rather than simply school management committee. Are they trying to say that they want to replace it? Or is it going to be, of course, a complex that they talk about, but how are the complex going to come up in the private institutions? I guess they're talking about government institutions having complexes. So, sorry, just two questions.
Okay, let me start with the second part first, because I think you've identified really two critical parts of the policy. One, to my mind, I mean, it may appear as a joke, complex appears to be a Freudian slip because the policy is complex, the education system is complex, so probably they put it there. What they probably have in mind is a complex that they're going to set up, a complex of schools, not complexity of education, and they are going to have that management committee. I'm not very concerned about whether they name it complex or not complex, because I don't believe in names. I mean, we have to do some action. But I'm really concerned about the lack of concern for the private sector in the policy. You know, if you read my articles which appeared yesterday in Economic Times and otherwise, in which I clearly pointed out that the education space is so huge that neither the public nor the private alone can do it. The only way forward is through public-private partnership. And this was a huge opportunity missed out by the policy makers in terms of encouraging private sector investment. The tragedy is somehow some private entities get them smuggled into it and they monopolize and then they manipulate the fee structure. Imagine a scenario if government was to facilitate private sector investment in it, the numbers would increase and through a market system, the fee system will come down. Unfortunately, they missed it out. They've also missed out on public-private partnership in the context of NGO, which I discussed earlier. Now coming to the examination part, there also I totally agree with you. I wonder why are they having this board examination of 5th and 8th? What purpose will it serve? Imagine the boards are already saddled with so much effort for class 10 and 12. In fact, there was so much scope for improvement there that instead of filtering their energies in terms of doing exams for 5th and 8th, they should focus on 10th and. In fact, in 5th and 8th, there should be assessment of competencies. And that's a good point in the policy. You know, they are mixing the two. They are planning to set up a national level setup, an institution, which will assess the competencies of the child and will help improve things. It's not examination. I am so glad you're saying what you're saying because my experience is very limited. You have a lot more experience, but I could feel it immediately. The tragedy of our existence is this unnecessary competition amongst children. You know, on a different plane, I deliver talks to senior people, in fact, and it applies to children also, that you have to compete with yourself, not with others. With others, you have to learn from them. Now, if you're competing with them, you'll never learn. So the tragedy of our existence is that we are competing with each other. We are pulling each other's leg somehow to reach a particular level, which is most unfortunate. I think we should learn to cooperate rather than compete. And if at all competition, it has to be oneself and improve. Again, the policy misses out. Whereas in one sense, policy does a wonderful thing. You know, taking off from what you said, you know, one of the biggest rackets in this country, it's not really a racket. It is actually a delusion that we have in terms of the marks that children have. You know, as Secretary of Education, if you read my book, there's the chapters in both the books where I talk about this delusion. This delusion is that the marks that a child got are not actually his marks. These are marks that spiked. How else do you explain 100 out of 100 in English literature? Shakespeare must be turning in his grave. It is a shocker. You know, if you read my book, I have suggested a way forward. In fact, I tried it. It worked, but a court gave a stay order till the time Mr. Anil Swarup retired, and then we are back to this farcical delusion, as I call it, of children getting those marks. So now children were competing. Now this policy provides a solution to that. What is the solution? Solution is on the basis of the why of these numbers. These numbers were increased or inflated because they got them admission in good universities. Now the policy talks in terms of doing away with that and holding an entrance test. So these marks will become meaningless. In any case, in life, these marks actually become meaningless. When I was in class 5, 6, 7, I used to struggle when I didn't come first in the class. Now, no one asked me today, nor is it written in my biodata, that in class 6 I came first, in class 7 I came second. It doesn't matter. But look at the tension that it brings to the child at that point in time. I think there was huge opportunity to address that. I'm hopeful that it will be. I'll tell you why. Because irrespective of what the policy is, the team presently at the School Education Department in Government of India is one of the finest teams. Number of officers have worked with me. I've seen them, how they work. Anita Karwal was the chairman CBSE, one of the finest officers now is Secretary of Education. Manish Jain is that phenomenal team. And I'm sure they're going to make it happen. Those parts of the policy that can be doable shall be done by them.
No, I think, Mrs. Burman, you must have surely read that they did make a mention about that, which is on the page 30. Best practices of private schools will be documented, shared and institutionalized in public schools and vice versa wherever possible. However, I'm sure they have given a little less of a due where private possibly deserves a little more. Sir, a quick question on this. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
What has happened is there's a load shedding once again. So I'm using my data to connect. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You're audible, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible, sir.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll switch off my video because I'm now on data. And I'll come back to video as soon as the connectivity comes. Okay. But I'll be available. I mean, I'll be talking all right. Is that okay?
No, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Audibly.
Please carry on.
Quick question, sir, and taking from where we left largely, don't you think it's little, I mean, obviously it's, as I said, it's yet to be implemented. It's a little over-regulated, too much of a regulation. What are your thoughts on that largely?
See, let us understand where the regulation is coming in and then we'll see whether it is over-regulated.
Yeah.
What are the provisions of the policy where regulation has been discussed? Enough. The regulation comes in the later part of the policy where it is talking in terms of splitting the existing Department of School Education. Department of School Education in every state is doing both the jobs. It's running public schools, that is government schools, and it is also a regulator. So you have district inspector of schools or whatever it is called, basic Shiksha Adhikari, who have both the jobs to do.
Correct.
Now, the policy says it will be split because right now there is a conflict of interest. Those guys that are running regulatory work will be split. There is a generator may become the new inspector, but that inspector already exists. He's already there, you know. The school inspector is already there in a different name, but they're there. The regulations are already there. So I don't see policy adding on to the regulation. What it is doing is it's splitting the existing regulatory framework, which was a part of the school education system. Now it's a separate system.
Okay. So you're saying this is not going to complicate it any further largely, but this is just bifurcating their roles.
That's
okay.
A promissory note.
Yeah.
So let's see whether it does or not.
Okay. I was also getting this question, and obviously after that I'll open the house for the Q&A largely. This entire language thing, sir. I would love to hear from you because though I did listen to the chairman as well who drafted this, Mr. Katul Dangan, which is largely about, is that the mandatory piece largely or it is optional piece largely?
No, it doesn't look to be mandatory as of now.
Correct.
And in any case, policy itself is not mandate. It will depend on what the government order is. And I hope they do. It will have to be staggered over a period of time. It is eminently desirable, but the operational issues will have to be addressed simultaneously for it to become applicable right through the country. So what will happen, as per my experience, what will happen is some states will pick it up and pick it up in some districts where they can do it, experiment it, see what the problems are, address those, and then scale. That's how it's going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but over a period of time it will.
I'll request any leaders to take up the question. Yeah, Indian Public School Dehradun, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sir, the GDP is 6%, which has been mentioned. We are hearing even from Kothari Commission, that time also they had a target of 6% of GDP towards education. Is it doable this time?
See, your guess is as good as mine. My experience tells me it will not happen. My experience tells me it will not happen.
It has to be made a law. Until and unless it is made as a law.
You make a law, then what will happen? I mean, unfortunately, when British left this country, they took justice with them and left behind laws, in-laws, and outlaws. And some of us believe that if we bring a law, things will happen. Do they really happen? Look at Right to Education Act. It is more done more damage to school education than the good. So please, for heaven's sake, don't even advocate a law. You should continue to build pressure, but never advocate a law, because then lawyers will benefit. You will not benefit or educate, because everything will go to the court, and courts are very happy, discussing things which are not directly related to them. So don't ever do that. Let us, as now I'm an outsider also, continue to discuss and continue to put pressure to increase the levels to the level as has been said in the policy. There is a reason why I'm saying it won't happen. Because the usual contribution of the government that was to be made under various policies, earlier policies and schemes, was not being made. The actual budget of school education was actually coming down in real terms over the years. So that is the ground reality. Now, if someone does decide and 6% does come in, very good. But I'm a great believer, cut your cloth according to the length of your cloth. But don't unnecessarily demand that. A lot of things can be done without seeking more budget. First, that needs to be done forthwith. So the points that I made with regard to teachers don't require additional budget. In order to improve the teachers' interest, in order to change the training of the teachers, you don't require huge budget. Start with that. Parallelly, start working on getting more and more money using policy as a leverage. But for heaven's sake, don't advocate a law. Law comes in, lawyers will benefit. You and I will remain here.
Nice. I will quickly request members. So if you have a question, please have a quick show of hand. And because chat is flooded, so I may end up missing your question on the chat largely. So please, I request, if you have a question, please put up a show of hand. Okay, Deepak Singhi, your question, please. After that, Sonu Sinha, Rakesh ji. After that, Dr. Priyanka Mehta. And
okay, till the time you are a question, I have mentioned, unfortunately, it goes privately. I have given my email ID.
Yeah, Deepak Singh.
Of time. Yeah, I'm typing it out to everyone.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Good evening, sir.
I don't know why is it going privately. Please announce. Yes, please go ahead.
I'll do that,
sir. Yes, sir. This is Deepak here from Himachal Pradesh.
Yes.
Sir, I am wondering, I have read all the policies, not only the new education policy, but earlier recommendations from various commissions. I am just wondering, sir, coming from a spiritual country like India, why never ever spirituality has got any space? Do we really believe that spiritual education can be given only at the college level? And I might be wrong, but I think even at the college level, spirituality has not been given space in this NEP. And is it so much of a extraneous idea to understand that we are souls having human existence? And
sir,
yes,
sir, please listen to me. I don't know what is your definition of spirituality. In my definition of spirituality, it is very personal in nature and it can never be taught. It has to be imbibed. So let us not waste our time in either discussing spirituality here or teaching in school. If someone wants to become spiritual, then there are ways in which we can. it has to be imbibed. It can never be taught. Like morality, like ethics, people talk. Can you ever teach it? It has to be demonstrated so that people imbibe it. So please try and understand the difference. Let us focus on what can be done, should be done, and perhaps will be done, rather than digressing in areas where spirituality may mean something else to somebody else and something else to somebody else. There's no, I mean, if you have a separate discussion, and I'll ask Gaurav to have a discussion on spirituality also, we will try and understand what exactly do you mean spirituality. To me, spirituality is when I sit down and play my guitar and compose my music, I'm totally meditating in that guitar. No, to you, it is not spirituality. To you, something else will be spirituality.
Absolutely.
So you can't define spirituality, and let's not get into that debate. And I am glad that the policy doesn't get into these details. So there's some repairs happening around my house, so you'll have to bear with it.
Sonu Sinha, your question, please. And I will request if you can give a brief introduction of yours as to where are you from largely. Sonu Sinha, please unmute yourself and ask the question. I'll move on to the next one. Rakesh ji, please go ahead, Rakesh ji.
Just hold on. I'll ask this guy to shut up, whoever is coming. Just hold on.
So we have a lot of questions, but obviously I will request all of you to let's keep our questions restricted to the policy document which we have, so that all of us largely gain from this discussion. There are many aspects. Yeah, Rakesh ji, your question, please go ahead. Rakesh Gupta ji.
सर आ गए क्या?
Yes,
आ
yes.
गए आपके सामने बैठे।
नमस्कार सर, राकेश गुप्ता गुड़गांव से।
बताइए राकेश जी।
सर, अभी आपने क्वालिटी ऑफ टीचर्स की बात करी थी अभी थोड़ी देर पहले
जी।
तो क्या उसमें डिस्टेंस लर्निंग या डिस्टेंस बीएड जो है वो एक बहुत बड़ा रीजन है टीचर्स की क्वालिटी उतनी अप टू द मार्क ना होने का?
हम अगर आज अपनी चर्चा नीति के संबंध में सीमित रखें तो उचित होगा। नीति में इससे संबंध में कोई चर्चा नहीं हुई है। मैं इसका उत्तर दे सकता हूं, आपको दे भी दूंगा।
नहीं, 4 साल का इंटीग्रेटेड प्रोग्राम बताया ना सर बीएड के।
जी। तो 4 साल के इंटीग्रेटेड प्रोग्राम के कई लाभ हैं। पहला लाभ ये है कि जब बच्चा 12वीं कक्षा पास करेगा तभी वो निर्धारित कर लेगा कि उसको टीचर बनना है। आज की तारीख में वो जब कहीं और नहीं आता तो वो टीचर बन जाता है। वो अपना कोर्स डिसाइड करेगा, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, जब ये 4 वर्ष का इंटीग्रेटेड कोर्स आएगा, जो आज की तारीख में 1-2 साल के जो पेपर पे चल रहे हैं कॉलेज, वो सब बंद हो जाएंगे। तो जो रेगुलर कोर्स है वही हो सकेगा। तीसरा, इसको परिपक्व रूप में अगर इसका जो विस्तार से जब बनेगा, मुझे आशा है कि इसमें व्यवहारिक ट्रेनिंग काफी होगी टीचर की, जिससे वो एक बेहतर टीचर बन के निकलेगा। जहां तक लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस टीचिंग का है, अब टेक्नोलॉजी में थोड़ा परिवर्तन आ रहा है और उसके माध्यम से ये कभी टीचिंग को रिप्लेस तो नहीं करेगा, लेकिन सप्लीमेंट जरूर करेगा, अच्छा बनाएगा। मैं आपको अपना व्यक्तिगत उदाहरण देता हूं कि टेक्नोलॉजी कैसे परिवर्तित कर सकती है। जब मैं खुद स्टूडेंट था तो मुझे काफी समय लगा आर्किमिडीज प्रिंसिपल समझने में। मैं नहीं समझ पाता था, बहुत समय लगा। मैं जब सेक्रेटरी एजुकेशन बना तो एक साहब आए, उन्होंने मुझे एक वीडियो दिखाया। 2 मिनट में उस वीडियो ने, 2 मिनट के वीडियो ने मुझे आर्किमिडीज प्रिंसिपल समझा दिया। तो मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं कि वो वीडियो टीचर को हटा देगा। मेरा कहना यह है कि आज की तारीख में टेक्नोलॉजी एक बड़ा सप्लीमेंट बनेगा। अब ये जो लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस है, जो वेब है, वो आपको डिलीवर कर सकेगा। पहले डिलीवरी कैसे करेंगे? आपके पास ज्ञान है, आप तक पहुंचे कैसे? आज की तारीख में मैं आपसे चर्चा कर रहा हूं, कैसे कर रहा हूं? इसलिए कर रहा हूं कि ये टेक्नोलॉजी उपलब्ध है, लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस में आपसे चर्चा कर ले रहा हूं। इमेजिन कीजिए अगर ये वेब नहीं होता और आज हम पेंडेमिक में होते तो क्या कर रहे होते? मैं आपसे बात ही नहीं कर पाता। तो टेक्नोलॉजी एक टूल है, लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस नेसेसरी नहीं है, बट इट कैन बी ए यूजफुल टूल, जो टेक्नोलॉजी है जिसके माध्यम से आप दूर बैठे हुए व्यक्ति तक पहुंच।
थैंक यू सर।
शुक्रिया।
डॉक्टर प्रियंका, आपका क्वेश्चन। डॉक्टर प्रियंका मेहता। Moving on, Sandhya Venkatesh. Please, ma'am, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, Anil ji. Policy is very nice, but only thing is my concern is implementation and readiness.
Okay,
am I audible, Gaurav?
Yeah,
I'm audible.
Okay.
You're audible.
So, no, you are audible and I've got your point. Let me now go.
Yeah.
I was so far discussing the conceptual part of it. Now let me understand the application part of it. and I tend to agree with you. I'll go step by step and explain to you where the problems will come in terms of implementing these laudable statements that have been made. Let us take one by one. First, in terms of early childhood, the idea is brilliant. It should happen, and probably it will happen. But the problem will come practically in terms of bringing together the Women and Child Welfare Department that runs Anganwadi and the primary school system. We started it, but Anganwadi system rests on a different pedestal and platform. The Anganwadi workers have different issues altogether. The policy talks in terms of training Anganwadi workers. I'm not sure whether that is possible, a doable thing. They will have to get hold of teachers specialized in early childhood. Now, early childhood education is totally different from regular education. And if we expect Anganwadi workers to teach them, I'm sorry, it will never happen. So that's going to be a practical problem there. The second practical problem that I see is in terms of conduct of these examination, class 5 and class 8. Practically, it will be a nightmarish exam. We run into serious problems. The third practical problem is the one that I discussed in terms of the mother tongue teaching. Again, it is eminently desirable, but to get it moving on the ground, there are huge number of practical issues. This is not to say that it will not happen, but it will take a lot of effort and planning for it to happen. And finally, I can go on and on. The bottom line in all this is money. Where is the money? They're talking in terms of 6% of GDP. I don't see it coming. If it comes, I'll be very, very pleasantly surprised. But to get that, right now, they are unable to fund their ongoing scheme. The states are crying hoarse because their money is not available, and states are unable to pay. To give you one example in which some of you may also be suffering, that they are unable to pay the fee under Section 812 of the RTE Act, where it is mandated that you will take children belonging to economically weaker section society and admit them. The state government has to pay their fee. And I know for sure number of states are not paying because in turn, the states are not getting money from the central government for a variety of things. So there is a huge financial problem. I often say it's very easy to give advice, become a Rai Saab. But for any idea to fructify and sustain in a country like India, it has to be politically acceptable. Fortunately, the policy is politically acceptable. Socially desirable, the policy is socially desirable. Technologically feasible, the policy could be technologically feasible. But then the problem comes. It has to be financially viable. That means there has to be money. Then it has to be administratively doable. You have to have administrative structures to deliver it. And finally, judicially tenable. So point 4 and 5 will be the real problem in this policy implementation. I hope it happens, and I'm an optimist. I know I think it will happen, but there are bound to be many, many problems. The real problem begins now. Policy वाले तो 6 साल में बना के चले गए. अब देखते हैं कितने साल में implement होती है.
सर, जब पॉलिसी बनती है तो उसमें कोई काम करने वाले ग्राउंड लेवल पे जो काम करते हैं उनको क्यों नहीं लिया जाता?
मैंने इस बात को प्रोटेस्ट किया था, पर ये निर्णय जैसे आपने कहा था कि मैंने वो राय दी, वो पॉलिटिकली एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं थी, तो उन्होंने जो ठीक समझा वो निर्णय ले लिया. तो आप स्थिति समझिए. पॉलिसी में कुछ ऐसे प्राविधान हैं जिसकी व्यवहारिकता पर कई प्रश्न चिन्ह लगे हुए हैं. अगर किसी व्यवहारिक व्यक्ति को, मैंने सजेस्ट किया था, आप एक प्रिंसिपल को ले लीजिए, उसमें 1-2 प्रिंसिपल ले लीजिए, 1-2 टीचर भी ले लीजिए. वो आपको धरातल की वास्तविकता से उनकी अगर वो अभिव्यक्त करेंगे तो आपको बोध होगा कि धरातल की वास्तविकता क्या है. तो जो आप नीति बना रहे हैं वो वास्तविकता पर आधारित होगी. You are not only dreaming, you are dreaming with your feet firmly on the ground. I believe in dreaming, but your feet firmly on the ground. Unfortunately, we are flying.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Your question.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening, sir. It's always a pleasure listening to you. I'm Priyanka, and I had a school in Greater Noida West. It's a new school, so my concerns are on the same line, sir. I understand that the policy that has come in is at a policy stage right now, and the execution and the guidelines are yet to follow. But sir, as a principal, I'm a little apprehensive on how should I plan my way ahead. What timelines, if you can just help me understand, what timelines can be built in for us to to be prepared for the implementation? What stages should we look at first and be ready in case this policy is taken up in toto or is debated or not debated is a huge question once again. But then
I'm sorry, ma'am. Unfortunately, there is some repair work going on in another flat that is causing a lot of disturbance here. I'll have to wait for this to sound. Yes, it's now. Let me explain this to you.
Yes,
it
sir.
may not
Thank
be
you.
possible for me to go step by step and draw out a roadmap for you. It's not possible in a conference like this. But what you should do is set up a small group that looks into each provision of the policy and work out a tentative action plan, because the policy itself does not give timelines. These timelines will come when the orders get issued. And these orders will be issued over a period of time. Keep track of those orders. And then when those orders come, then sit down and work out a detail. At this point in time, you can only work out a general strategy of meeting the requirements of the policy, some of which may not be implemented immediately. So it can only be a very general discussion. It is only when the orders come. Policy is not a government order. Policy is the reflection of the intention of the government. But the orders will actually define the details and the timelines. It is at that point in time, you should have a consultative group. We should advise you on how to do it. This should not be very difficult, but you have to start preparing yourself for that.
Thank you so much, sir. And what I understand is that we're very fond of reaction and response, immediate to anything that happens. So what we understand right now is that there is no change in how the class 10 and 12 is going ahead in the coming year, and there is no change in the way the examinations will be held. Am I right in my
So
understanding?
let me. I mean, my guess will be as good as yours. I've been out of school education for past more than 2 years. So my guess is nothing is going to happen in next 1 year.
Right, sir. Thank
You
you
will
so
have
much,
a
sir.
you will have a lead time. You will have a lead
Yeah.
time where you can prepare yourself for that.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gaurav.
Most welcome. Anu Kumar, your question. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Arul Kumar. Yeah, Deputy Director Academics, Stepping Stone School, Chandigarh. And so I'm a science guy, okay? So I've done my doctorate in physics. So I'm coming from that perspective, really. Whole thing of teaching in mother tongues, right, till class 5. I did my doctorate from Belgium. I've been working in foreign countries for 10 years. And I see that, English is a major, it's the language that we scientists communicate in. That's the only way you can communicate in. And secondly, coming from a learning point of view, a child can learn maximum number of languages. I mean, that's a scientifically proven fact, right? Typically, a child up till the age of 10 can learn up to 5 languages. Beyond that, it just keeps on decreasing. For example, when I had to learn German at the age 20, it was impossible for me, really. So this whole thing of not teaching in English, and that will remain the weak point for the children. And in today, will have to interact with people from all around the world. I don't see the whole, the idea of teaching mother tongue.
Okay, and
Why
Mr.
in
Kumar,
class,
Mr. Kumar,
I mean,
Mr. Kumar, Mr. I have got your point. Let me explain this to you. Let me discuss it at a conceptual level. Operational level, there will be problems, but conceptual level, each one of you should understand this. You are confusing between learning a language and medium of instruction.
Right.
No one stops you from learning a language till class 5. Who stops you from learning language? Please do that. But medium instruction is a different aspect altogether. And mind you, the best college or best school in Delhi teaches in Hindi till class 5 and switches over to English. Sardar Patel Vidyalaya. My son studied there. And I can vouch for it. Understanding a concept is so much better in your mother tongue. And mother tongue is not what you want your child to learn, which is English, but what you speak at home, that's your mother tongue. And understanding is much easier. So no one stops you from learning 5 or you learn 10 languages. But the medium of instructions, now I'm talking only at conceptual level. Operationally, there will be a problem. But conceptually, I'm totally convinced that up to class 5. And secondly, let me explain this to you. The best of students come out of Navodaya Vidyalaya. They do phenomenally well. Till class 8, they are taught in mother tongue. Can you believe it? And they don't miss out later. So let's not talk in terms of, we should clearly understand the difference between the language of instruction and language. You must learn language. You can learn language. You should learn language. Who stops you from learning English from class 1 to 5? In fact, policy doesn't say that you should not learn English. It talks about medium of instruction to class 5. Language is a part of your culture. The medium instruction. You get disconnected with your roots. So it's Jack and Jill went up the hill because that's what you're taught. That's what the British taught us. I had my education in English medium. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. But if you were to compare with your mother tongue, I would rather have my child go to a school, learning in mother tongue till class 5, and then switching over. I would make him learn other languages also as he does class 5. So learning in a particular medium is different. And my dear friend, if you want to learn science in BSc in English, no one stops you from doing that. You can still do it. Just because you learned in your mother tongue till class 5, how do you presume that you will not be able to? There's so many of them doing that. So let's not get into this conceptual debate on whether I can understand the operational part of it. The operational debate, I'm okay with it. But conceptually, I'm convinced that mother tongue is the day forward, is the thing forward for the first 5 years.
But Anil sir, just to take on this question itself, but I personally feel, is it mentioned somewhere in the policy which say that this will be a mandatory way?
No.
It's not mandatory, right?
No, it's not. It's not. That's why I said I am discussing it at a conceptual film. Whether it should be there or
exactly.
I am not. The policy doesn't mandate that it will happen. But I think that's a way forward. We should all, माफ कीजिएगा मैं शब्द का इस्तेमाल कर रहा हूँ, अंग्रेज चले गए, अंग्रेजी छोड़ गए हमारे. But I'm very fond of English language. I'm not against it. But obsession with the language is wrong. If you got to be obsessed with your mother tongue.
Correct. Usha Reddy ji, आपका question. Miss Usha Reddy, your question. Yeah.
So good evening, sir. My question is for higher education. It said that there will be only one body that will be regulating.
I raise my hands. I'm still lower educated. I'm not graduated in higher education because I can give you my personal view on what you're saying, but professionally I have no idea about the higher education part. I have personal views on higher education. If you want my personal view, I can give you that.
My question is, what is the status for schools? I'm not worried about higher education, sir.
Sorry.
I wanted to understand what is the status of schools. For example, if it's going to be one regulatory body for them, we are CBSE schools, for example. So what would be our condition?
Okay, now this is very unusual in the policy, and I am still trying to fathom it. The policy talks of a state level regulator that will regulate the state schools, and they are talking of separate regulators for central schools. Now, I'm not very comfortable with it. You can't have two sets of regulators. There can be two sets of examination bodies, but regulator has to. The schools operate in the same geographical domain. How can you have two sets of regulators? But the policy says that for CBSE and KVA schools, there will be separate regulatory body, and for state schools, there will be separate regulatory body. I don't appreciate that, but that's what the policy is.
Thank you, sir.
Pradeep Jain, your question, please. Mr. Pradeep Jain, please unmute yourself. Mr. Pradeep Jain, I'll go to Bini Singh. Bini ji, आप पूछिएगा अपना question. Unmute करना होगा आपको. Bini ji.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening, sir, and good evening, Gaurav. My question was the RTE. Now we have introduced RTE right from class nursery to class 12th. And when we see the disparity, what the government proposes to pay the private schools and what is the per child expenditure where the government schools are concerned. So why is there so much of, imbalance in it? So why does the government see practicality in it? So, sir, this is one question, and first I want to answer that.
Okay. Let me attempt to answer that. First of all, I don't stand here on behalf of the government to answer why did government do this. These are all my personal views. I just mentioned in the chat box the name of the latest book that has come.
Correct.
This has a full chapter on RTE, on Right to Education Act, and the damage that RTE has done to school education in this country. And it is unfortunate that we are talking in terms of extending this RTE to class 12. I have always believed that you don't really require a law to do things that you have to do. Law only enables lawyers to contest it in the courts of law. If something needs to be done, it can be done. So why do we extend it to RTE? I have examined at length various provisions of RTE which have actually damaged the school education. So, for example, sorry, come again. So what I was saying was, I'm personally not in favor of extending the provisions of RTE to any other class. You can do what you have to do. You don't require a law to do. Does government require a law to do what it has to do in the policy? No. Should you create a right for the child, that right is already there in RTE. So why do you want to spend time? You can't imagine the time gets wasted in coming up with a law. So if you got to amend the RTE, you'll have to go. Half my time got wasted in getting rid of the no detention policy, because once it is there, it takes a whole lot of time to correct it. The law becomes very inflexible. To change it is very difficult. Through an executive order, if you want to do something, do it. Who stops you from doing it? So I'm not in favor too much getting to RTE business. I don't know why. And my initial view when Dr. Kasturirangan spoke to me, I told him, why don't you suggest the changes in RTE? They say there will be another committee that will look into it. Now 2 committees have spent 6 years to come to this conclusion. They want another committee to suggest the changes in RTE. ये कब तक चर्चा और चिंतन होता रहेगा? Action का time है. Let's get down to action instead of just चिंतन.
Sir, I remember when you were in the services, we were expecting this change to come from you. And after you retired, we were just wondering who's going to be the next, who's going to look into it. Well, my second question is that when we say that we are going to go globally, we are following the pattern which is a global pattern, and where education is concerned, we might like to have foreign investors in education. So where do you think the private institutions of our country going to stand, right, where you have such tight collars around our neck? You can't raise your fee, you can't do this, you can't do that. Your restrictions are galore. So do you think it would be good for our system that the disparity or the difference would be so much that where do we stand? How can we make another Nalanda if we have those reins around our neck and feet?
So my view is very clear on this, and I wrote on this in my book, again, the one that I mentioned, Ethical Dilemmas, and Not Just a Civil Servant. In both books, I've expressed my views that I want to get rid of these reins. There has to be a regulator, but the reins that we have now are doing a lot of disservice to education. If you heard me earlier, if you joined earlier, I was talking about getting private sector on board rather than treating them as pariahs. Right now, we have imposed so many restrictions on the private domain that the flourishing of the school. So what happens is, people or organizations that are smart enough to play around these rules are able to take advantage of the monopoly that they create. It is the pre-90 economy in education, where some Bajajas and some Tatas and some Birlas benefited, but rest of the country was not benefiting. Here, I would not like to take names of the schools, but again, I have written in my book, I have not named the schools, but I've said that's another mafia that is operating, the mafia schools. And it happens because of the shortage of supply. Now, let me explain this to you. When I became coal secretary, I asked somebody, yaar, ye sector kaisa hai? So instead of answering my question, he asked me a question. He asked me, gangs of Wasseypur dekhi hai kya? So I understood that what coal sector is. Then I tried to understand the why of the problem. Why are these mafias there? And I came to the clear conclusion, they are there because of the shortage of coal supply. So instead of fighting with mafias, I worked towards increasing of coal supply, and it worked. And the mafias dissipated. The same logic applies to education. The school mafias will dissipate if you allow more schools to come in. We don't do that. So whoever enters the domain of opening a private school does not want others to come in, does not want the reins to be loosened. I would want the reins to be loosened. But there has to be self-regulation, some regulation has to be there, but it can be done. So I totally agree with you that not only that, we should promote private sector investment in education. Where is the money going to come from, this 6% that we are talking of? A lot of it could have come from the private domain. It's not necessary for the government only to keep investing. Why can't private sector invest? And I know for sure, a large number of private institutions are investing in education. But can we help them do more? Can we treat them as partners in transforming school education or quality of school education in this country? We should. This was a huge opportunity that we missed out.
Thank you so much. I agree with you. And I wish you could give us some suggestion that the schools, private school associations, what we can do to bring these revolutionary changes, especially these two what I spoke about. And
okay. Let me explain this. Let me explain this. You see, post retirement, I thought I would have a lot of time. Fortunately, unfortunately, I've got busier. I'm busier than what I was when I was Secretary of Government of India. But I love it. I am enjoying every moment. I never thought life would be as great as it has turned out to be post-retirement. I have a busy schedule, but if people approach me, I do squeeze in time and sit down and discuss, and whatever intellectual capital that I have, I am prepared to share that with you. But it has to be in a structured manner. It has to be well defined. I have no problem. I do advise a number of organizations even now, and I have no problem in doing that. But it has to be structured in a manner so that I can plan accordingly. This slot on a particular day, I can be available for a discussion on any issue where I can be of any assistance, help, and guidance.
Thank you so much, sir.
That's
and I
very
wish
forthcoming, sir.
you as a false office as a bearer of this torch. Thank you.
Mr. Vineet, we have exact now 6 minutes remaining. So I have asked sir for exact 1 hour largely, so I'll stick to my time. Mr. Vineet, your question? You can unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Subina from the Aryan International School.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Your name reads Vinita. Vineet, okay.
Because actually I'm using his iPad.
Okay.
So good evening, Gaurav and everybody, and good evening, Anil sir. I'm from the Aryan International School, Varanasi. So I just wanted a view from you, sir. Actually, these are the board exams that have been applied on classroom classes 3 and 5 and 8. So I just wanted your view. Don't you think that it is an unnecessary pressure put on the children? We wanted an environment devoid of any fear of examination. But it restricts these board exams, you know, it restricts learning because you need to revise, re-revise, wherein at that period of time, you can do a lot of project work, you can do a lot of field work instead of, you know, preparing for a board exam where you have to revise n number of times, and that puts a pressure. So that doesn't.
Madam, I totally agree with you. No, I totally agree with you. I wish and hope somebody. Sorry, I totally agree with you. I wish.
Game, not a knowledge. It becomes a marks-oriented game. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. Yes. Please.
No, I totally agree with you. I wish and hope that someone gives it a thought and buries it where it needs to be buried.
True.
Because examination is not the way to assess a child.
True.
At some point in time, yes. But in earlier years, it has to be assessment of his competencies, which is different from examination. Fortunately, the policy talks about assessment of competencies, yet goes back to examination. I don't know what is this fascination for examination. It is very surprising. My suggestion is, you know, this is a policy that has come, but there is a difference between policy and the actual executive orders. There should be debate, discussion, and pressure to see that this doesn't happen, because this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, look at the time, effort, and money that will go into the conduct of these examinations without requisite outcomes out of these examinations. And I think the focus should have been in assessment of his capacities, capabilities, rather than in writing an exam. You know, it surprises me, because not only will the child be troubled, I think the boards will be troubled even more. You know, imagine a board conducting so many exams, class 3, 5, 8, 10. Exactly. What is the purpose that is getting served? I don't fathom it. So I totally agree with you. I think this needs to be dispensed with.
So, you know, at our time, we are at a 60% were more knowledgeable than at a 90% of student today. So it's become more of
Madam, we can discuss this at length on why this has happened. But since I agree with you, there's no point in hammering the point and killing it right here, because already killed as far as we are concerned.
Ramdas Rai, your question, please.
Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Sir, my question is more from a societal perspective. And excuse me if it is not appropriate, okay? So there are 3 things that I liked from the policy. Like, first is the mother tongue thing, which we all discussed already. The issue of teaching in mother tongue. The second is the apprenticeship or internships in areas like carpentry, metalwork, and pottery. And the third thing is diversity in subjects as at 10th and 12th level. So adding arts to STEM, like humanities, liberal arts, so making this diversity. So my question is, how much do you think the society will accept these ideas? Because in our society, like you said, Angrej chale gaye, Angreji chhod gaye. So the obsession with English is there. This, so 1 second, sir. This also lack of respect for neighbor is there. So how much will it work?
Mr. Rai, I'm not a sociologist, so I won't be able to comment on the society as a whole. I can give you my perspective at it. Whether society likes it or not, only time will tell, or probably some Raja Ram Mohan Roy will explain it to you. But as far as I am concerned, I totally agree with these provisions. And my hope is that the so-called society, as you say, will accept it. But forget about society. My request to you is you and your school should accept it first. Because charity has to begin at home. I mean, these days, the best thing is to say what the world will do. Forget it. You have to change yourself. And I hope, since you agree with it, you'll accept it. I totally agree with it. If I were to do it, I'll do it that way. And now that we are coming to a conclusion, can I make two requests to the participants here? One is, I've started a movement called Nexus of Good. This movement is basically to identify good work, because there's so much negativity in the society. Identify good work, understand good work, appreciate good work, replicate good work, and scale good work. So those of you who want to join this movement, it's very easy. Go to the web portal, and I would request Gaurav to convey it to everyone, nexusofgood.org.in. Please join the Nexus of Good movement. It will help you because you will see a lot of good work on that portal. Phenomenal amount of good work that is happening. Stories are there. I would request all of you to host your stories. You can directly host your stories. Whether you are a member or not, you can host your stories. Do that. Number two, a lot of questions that came, you'll find those answers and details in the book that I've written, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. If you find time, I would request you to read that book, and I will await your comments. Probably you will discover that these books are good enough for children of class 11 and 12. And maybe in your library, if it's kept there, they will be able to read and see what is the ground reality in terms of governance in this country. And it will help them evolve as better individuals. So thank you very much, Gaurav, for calling me here at 6 o'clock. So
not at all, sir. Completely out of time, but we will stick to our timeline, which is exact 6 o'clock. We will close this. So first thing first, thank you very much, sir, for your valuable time and very, very upright answering. I would say loved your style. Secondly, I, on behalf of the entire IPN family, lend the complete support to Nexus of Good initiative, and I will ensure that I will put the logo of or the movement on IPN website as well, so that people really get to know about the movement at large. And lastly, first thing after this session I'm going to do is actually going to quickly order this book of yours and possibly like to know a little more about it, and we'll spread the word around. Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure hosting you. Hopefully I will request you some other time to as well join us. Thank you very much.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you everyone who has joined in. Take care, everybody. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.